How's it going, Landry?
Oh no, he froze.
No.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh,
No.
you're frozen.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the HoloNet Marauders podcast. I'm AJ, and I'm joined here, as always, by my Bombad Pirate Marauders crew. Pirate and Marauders, I guess the same thing, but
Yes,
hey,
it is.
How's it going, Jamie and Matt?
It's going well.
It's going well. I'm excited today.
Going well.
Me too.
Wait, super excited today because we have a very special guest on the podcast today. We have author Landry Q Walker. He was the author for Star Wars. I can't read. Stars, Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away, Aliens, in which this is where we have our beloved tale about Sidon Ithano. So Crimson Corsair and the Treasure of Count Dooku, and a bunch of other fun stuff. So, Landry, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're super excited to have you. And AJ, you want to get started?
Yeah, I just want to, as listeners of the show, and as you can see, our mascot sort of turned into Sidon himself. Just, I don't really know what inspired it, really, guys, but like, we love the look of him. From seeing Force Awakens, I love the look of him, and then all the lore added to him. Obviously by Landry. Really, we love pirates. I think that's so we love space pirates too in Star Wars. And, it's I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you were thrown off to see like a podcast with the Sidon logo. I don't know if there's really any.
Made me very happy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the guy to go to for Sidon, so I can't tell you how excited we are to have you on.
Yeah, we're very excited for this. But first question, as I always ask all of our guests, it's what got you into Star Wars as a kid or whatever? Like, how'd you become a Star Wars fan?
Well, I was the right age because I'm about to turn 50 in a few months, and so when Star Wars came out, the first one, I was 6, I want to say, going on 7, which is kind of a perfect age for that to be in theaters. I didn't know what I was seeing. When I was almost a little too young for it, but just old enough that I was engrossed thoroughly. Every kid my age, everything they were into died the moment Star Wars came out, and it became all about Star Wars. And then so that I'm 9 when Empire Strikes Back comes out, and 12 when Return of the Jedi comes out. Any younger for the first one, I would have been a little too young to really understand much of it. A little older, and by the time Return of the Jedi came out, I would have been like, yeah, another Star Wars movie, whatever. I was just the perfect age to be captivated by every minute of it. So yeah, I don't think I could not be a Star Wars fan. Every kid I knew, that's all that mattered was Star Wars.
Right. It's funny you mentioned like Star Wars came out and everything else didn't matter, because right before you came on, we were discussing like, remember like before Force Awakens, we were always Star Wars fans here, but like the sequel trilogy really revitalized a lot of us as Star Wars fans. And we were talking about like Mad Max and different movies that came out in 2014, and then we're like, that was a weird time, because then Force Awakens came out, and we dropped everything, and we were like, we're back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned that. But my other question was, obviously that's how you became a Star Wars fan, but how did it come about writing for Star Wars, working on Star Wars projects?
It's kind of funny because I was working, the company Sideshow Collectibles?
Yeah.
I was working for them for a couple of years on a property called Court of the Dead. And so I was surrounded by all the beautiful Star Wars stuff they do. Like walking down, that office is amazing. It's like this 3-story building with all of the stuff they make. Just around the corner from where I'd be working, there was the life-size, oh God, why am I blanking? Darth Malgus statue. So I'm hanging out with this life-size Darth Malgus all the time. And just looking at the 6-scale Star Wars started to really get me back into, this is a year or two before Force Awakens came out. So I'm looking at this stuff, getting really into Star Wars again, just seeing the toys, because I was always a toy person. And then so I'm starting to feel this kind of fever pitch. So I start watching Clone Wars, which I hadn't watched. And I'm starting to get into that. And then I get this, I'm standing in the middle of Sideshow working with my friend Eric, and I look at my email, and I've got an email from Lucasfilm just saying, hey, we want you to write some Star Wars. That was really it. They came to me and asked me.
So casual.
And my heart stopped beating. I wasn't breathing. I was like, huh? Yeah, I'm like, there we go. I'm trying to drink my coffee with one hand and hold my iPad with another since my is limited.
It's good. It's very on brand, like revealing the excitement. Just be like, oh my gosh, the disorientation. It's great. It's perfect. So that book would have been Aliens, right? And so how did like that process go, like going into it? Like what did like Lucasfilm give you, and then like what did you pretty much like come up with on your own?
This is an interesting thing. So they basically say, okay, can you come in next week to Lucasfilm and we'll meet? And so I go in, which is convenient because I actually live up in the Bay Area, right across the bay from Lucasfilm Publishing. And I go in and they bring me into one of those business conference rooms. And it turned out like half the people in there I had worked with at different companies before. So it was a nice little reunion. And they put out like 30 different images of aliens in front of me from Force Awakens. And they give me a quick like rundown. Here's the basic premise of Force Awakens. And I can pick. There were two characters they wanted me to work with. They wanted me to do 6 stories. 2 of them they picked, and that was Baba Joe and Unkar Plutt. The other 4 were up to me. And so I've got all I have are the pictures with a little couple sentence description. I think was written by Pablo Hidalgo, but I'm not sure if he's the one who wrote that stuff or not. And so, I mean, the Crimson Corsair was right there in front of me, looking amazing. But so I picked all the other 4. And I think all I had for each of them was a sentence, and everything after that I built.
Nice. So like
we're glad you picked him.
Yeah, I would have picked
seriously.
him too. I mean, we did pick him, kind of.
The way he looks.
The look alone. I mean, like we chat about all the time how like everything that like comes about like from the story, like that's like the reason like why like we like enjoy Sidon so much, because like he's in the Force Awakens and like he's incredible, and like obviously he has just like Quiggles with him just like chilling, but like they don't do anything really in the movie, but like actually like seeing like what they do is like, or reading about it was like really, really exciting for us.
Yeah. You don't get that sarcastic quiggled personality from the movie.
Okay, you can like barely walk. They like help each other out the door. It's great. I always kind of refer to Sidon Ithano as like the sequel's Boba Fett in a way. Right. Although Boba Fett's more of a solo guy, I guess, where I don't know, he has the cool look that catches your eye.
He has when the original
line, yeah, go ahead.
Boba Fett has a couple, and admittedly Boba Fett has a bigger impact on the plot, but I am surprised that it has taken so long to get to do anything much else with the Crimson Corsair, because he is a character I think that if he was invested in with more ancillary material could have that same kind of impact. But there has to be a recognition and an investment to make it happen.
Yeah, no, exactly. Which is kind of why
we're trying to build up that recognition. Just throwing that out there.
Is just for that, you know?
I mean, there must be a little bit of recognition for him, because when the Resistance season 2 trailer came out, he was like one of the big reveals in that. And we were pumped for that. And he was only in it for like a minute in that little intro. We go back like daily and watch that intro.
I watched it. I saw that and I was like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with Sidon Ithano?
So you didn't know they were going to put him in there? Like, I mean, obviously it's not really like you have ownership over him, but like they weren't even like, hey, we're going to use him.
Yeah, no. I found out the same way everyone else did. And
that's crazy.
I mean, I've got good connections in the publishing world, but the TV and movie world can kind of do what they want. And I was really, really super happy with what they did with him, because I felt it tied right in with the story. You know, we end the, am I jumping ahead on any questions you want to ask?
You're good.
No,
okay. You're good.
The, you know, and this is spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the book, and if they haven't read the short story and they're watching this podcast with his face on it, I'm a little shocked. Disappointed and sad for them. But the story ends with, you know, this promise, this hint of raiding old separatist and other bases for military supplies. And what do we see? And the next thing we see of Sidon anywhere is a blip in Star Wars Adventures that I wrote, where we see all these battle droids coming out of the ground. And then the next thing we see is the cartoon where he's selling battle droids.
Yeah.
So it all connects. I mean, I was very pleased with that.
that must have been like super cool to see that they really like adhered to what you set up. Like you had this story that you created, this lore, and then they came in and took that and expanded upon it. That must have been so cool.
That's exactly. And that's honestly the dream whenever you're doing this kind of stuff, for me anyway, is this desire to plant seeds that do get taken off by other people. I just want to plant more of those seeds before it goes too far. So I've been trying very hard to create more opportunities to work with the character. It's like I did a Supergirl series called Supergirl Cosmic Adventures in the 8th grade. And there are elements of that. I don't know if any of you have watched the current Supergirl TV show.
Not.
Yeah, it's kind of a niche sort of show, but there are elements of it, characters in there that while I didn't create, the characters that had showed up 7 times in the 1970s and never again that I brought back that are now on television, basically the versions I created, or the one character anyway. And that is a heady feeling. It's exciting.
That's so fun.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That must be.
That's really cool.
Fun. Yeah. I mean, you want to contribute to these larger mythos that we're all fans of, and just, push it and influence it a little bit.
Yeah. I got to ask about my favorite clone trooper, which happens to be Kix, CT61116. And it was before your story, I just got to say. Because I've always loved Medic Kix anyway. But him showing up in the Bad Batch arc in the Clone Wars Season 7. Sorry to get a little bit weird on the timeline here, but
wait, does he?
Yeah, he's in the Bad Batch Season 7.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Wait.
What?
So he's in the Bad Batch episodes.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying he was in the Bad Batch. I'm like, I'm caught up to date on the Bad Batch.
Oh man.
No. For context, for anyone who might know, listener wise, Kix shows up in the Bad Batch arc when they go to Anaxis, and he helps on that little thing, and then helps Cody. So, but in your story, Kix is often on Kix is the prize. Then literally, why'd you pick Kix? And just tell me everything you can about that.
Well, and honestly, it was kind of simple mathematics of it. I wanted a character who had a reason to be plugged in. He was always kind of I wanted it to be a clone that I didn't want it to be a random clone. I didn't want to make a clone up for it. I wanted it to be a character from the show who had scenes, who had lines. He was one of my favorite ever since the Umbara battle, where I think that's the episode where he briefly, maybe it's a different episode, but he briefly pulls rank on Rex. Maybe it's one where they crash landed and they find the clone.
I think that's Umbara. Because Kix wants to save as many as he can, and Rex is like, well, you can't, and so
there's one where he literally tells Rex, when it comes to matters of safety of our team, our people, I have rank. He pulls a little bit. He goes a little McCoy Star Trek, which was always one of my favorite things in Star Trek, was seeing the doctors go, actually, I have rank when it comes to medical matters. So, and seeing Kix do that cemented in my mind. And then you go into the one where after Tup shoots the Jedi, and Fives starts investigating, the clone he finds in the bar is Kix. And he goes to Kix and he says, and Kix like, oh my God, everyone is hunting you. This is bad. And he's like, you got to get me Skywalker. I got to talk to General Skywalker and Rex. And Kix goes through that. He doesn't turn him in. He's loyal, and he helps connect it. And that's the last, at that time when I wrote the story, that was the last we saw of Kix. Now, I did not know about the unfinished episodes at the time as they were. I found out about those after I wrote my story. So I was like, this is kind of perfect, because also Kix was the doctor the medic on scene when Tup did the shooting and had lines and scenes, and he was one suggesting send him to Camino. So he had all the reasons to put some threads together and start his own investigation. And he had the motivation because these were his brothers. And he was concerned with all the medical aspects, as we saw in other episodes. So it didn't seem reasonable to me that he would let it go at that point. He would push it, and he had just enough medical knowledge to, if Fives could go as far as he did, then Kix could even go potentially, could get there quicker. He has enough medical knowledge to put himself in more danger.
Yeah.
So everything about him lined up.
So at some point you had to stop him. Because he could theoretically get too far and blow the door off everything. So you had to figure out a way to separate him.
Well, and it kind of comes into, not having him explore. Sometimes when you're writing a character, not having them take an action is a weakening point for them. It would be weaker for Kix as a character if he dropped it at that point.
Yeah.
So having him, not only did I need a character to be in that role, but Kix not having some further arc with this would lessen who he had been established in these scenes to be. Even though he is always a minor character, it mattered. So yeah, those are the reasons I picked.
Okay,
Kix.
cool.
Good reason.
I just love to like hear it, because it's just like, this is literally every single thought that like I've had like about it as well. Because this is why it makes sense. Like, cars going by. This is why it makes sense that Kix was the one. And so like, it's just interesting that like in the Bad Batch arc that he even appears, because like when we see him again in that arc, he doesn't have the shaved head anymore, and he just has like regular hair, but you can kind of see his tattoo, which is the look that is in the comic, which is really cool to see in that one frame.
I actually want them to go further. I wanted it to go further in the comic. I wanted a shaggier beard, like he stopped, not so curated, not so trimmed. His hair is overgrown, but that would make sense. Like at that point, if he started to grow his hair out, because I didn't have anything to do with that, but they did add the hair, and I thought that's interesting. You know, I wondered if that was an attempt to bridge it, because I know they know about the story, because the notes I got on the story when I wrote it, because I just ran with it. I didn't ask for permission to use Kix. I just did it. And so one of the notes, I think, again, from Pablo, when he put notes in the story, was we need to check with Dave Filoni and make sure we can use Kix. So I assume they did, and they got a thumbs up. So I know, based on that, I assume that Dave Filoni knows about the story, knows what they did, and has done little things to make sure it doesn't step on it.
I love that. So like I love how it was the Clone Wars inspiration, the story was written, and then they went back for season 7, and they're like, okay, let's just kind of toss it there, because like I love how this is like literally all I think about sometimes. I love how Kix wasn't at the Siege of Mandalore, so that means sometime before that, but sometime after the Bad Batch arc, but before the Siege of Mandalore, he gets shipped off, and that's it. And so I just like, it all fits together. I love the clones, and obviously, as you can see here.
You want to know a couple of secrets from the cutting room floor that didn't make it into the story?
Yeah.
Please.
So the idea was that I'm blanking on her name, the Jedi that's always on Kamino, same species as Ahsoka.
That's Shakti.
Yeah. Shakti.
Yeah. That
she's starting to get suspicious of things too. Kix does some investigations, and she was going to work with Kix on a ship of her people. He was going to be frozen in carbonite, because, and my argument on that was, the 501st knows the carbonite trick from when they went to the prison planet.
Yeah.
So he was frozen in carbonite originally, and the idea being that she helped smuggle him onto a ship of her people, but someone on Kamino ratted them out. They got ambushed by the Separatists. He got captured. That ship was destroyed. And this is all happening very, not long before Revenge of the Sith as we're going. And what was it going to be? I got told that carbonite was not really an option they wanted to go with. And I tried to push it, saying, no, I understand maybe you feel carbonite is overused or something, but it makes sense in this instance because he's been there before. He would know this trick.
Yeah.
Like if anyone in the Star Wars universe, any of the people, like there's a reason you'd go, oh, that's why Darth Vader thought to do the carbonite trick on Han Solo. He's already been frozen himself.
Yeah.
Although I will say, when you think in that context, it takes a little of the risk out of it, right? It's a little less like,
a little
like,
bit.
oh,
where they say like, oh, what if he dies? It's like, well, no, we've done this before. Relax.
Old trick. He'll be fine. That's what Darth Vader said. No, I did this once myself.
Yeah.
He'll be fine. Don't
We should dub that in.
Yeah. The next special edition edit.
I love it.
Goes into a long story about it.
I love it. I guess let's bring it back to just like Sidon though in general. So this is a different kind of question. So how do you personally pronounce Sidon Ithano?
The exact same way you just did.
Okay,
Sidon
cool.
Ithano.
Sidon Ithano.
Because I know in Resistance, Kragan is like, "Ooh, Sidon Ithano," and it's always made me question, like, "Wait, am I saying it wrong?"
Yeah. And then the other big one, their ship, the Maison Martinet, am I saying that one correctly?
Probably. I always pronounce that was one of the things that was in that had been dictated before I came on was the name of the ship.
Oh.
And
Nice.
so I didn't choose that. And I always pronounce it in my head, Misan Martinet.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
I don't know what's correct in there.
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the lore guy on Sidon. So I guess we can.
But I didn't create that one. In fact, I originally, I think that's how we ended up. Like, I think I originally, not realizing they had a name for the ship, in my first draft, I just called it the Shrike, which I ended up using for something else in the
used
same
it for the
story.
skiff.
Yeah, that's why and I actually just like the idea that Sidon has a lot of gear. Yeah, they're more with that.
I love that. For, I guess, like in general, so like obviously they're pirates, they're Marauders. What would be like the biggest like inspiration for like Sidon's like crew and just like everything in general that you took for this?
You know, that's a good question. I had a day to write each one of these stories.
Oh my god.
And
Wow.
That's crazy.
It was bonkers. Well, I mean, they gave me, you know, like a month or something technically, but I was working for Sideshow at the time. I was on retainer with Sideshow. It was, you know, a very time consuming job working on this Court of the Dead stuff for them. And so I couldn't reasonably take time out of my week to work on it. So I just had to do weekends, which the schedule allowed me, I think, 2 to 3 weekends. So that's basically a story a day. Yeah, 6 days. And I wrote that Crimson Corsair story in 3 hours, I think.
Wow.
And I didn't know where I was going from chapter to chapter. I had no plot planned out. I'm just like, let's just roll with this, because sometimes that's all you can do. So all I did was I found I worked to music a lot of the time, music without lyrics. So I'm just searching for whatever. I think what I ended up finding was this acoustic version of Duel of the Fates for that one. And sometimes, so I bounced between that and Unusual, because it had lyrics, the MC Chris Boba Fett song. Which then MC Chris does a Sidon Ithano song referencing the book, and just like, oh.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's come full circle. That's so funny.
That's right up Jamie's alley with finding like
oh my god,
weird versions of songs to work to or something. You recently looked up like what was it, medieval versions of like
that's been like my favorite thing recently. There's there's
I love those. Those had been around 5 years ago. Whenever I would have been listening to a lot of those. I'm a big fan of that stuff.
You haven't lived until you've heard Slim Shady, but like on like a little like harpsichord, like it is insane. Like
I haven't heard that one.
It's so good. Like just look up like medieval rap. It's insane. But yeah, like that's like under the radar. Like one of my like favorite small like lore things in Star Wars is like what kind of music to like they listen to like in universe. And so like I love how like when music does inspire a character, but then I love when you actually hear them experiencing it as well. And it's something that like we've seen a lot more in like the recent times with Star Wars content, because like we have obviously the classic Cantina band, but like that's just like whatever, it's just like their club music. But then like we are getting like more music recently with like an actual band making music for the video game Jedi Fallen Order. And then like you mentioned music at one point during the Crimson Corsair story, and then the High Republic, the Nihil Raiders are all just like listening to like punk music the entire time. It's crazy. I love it.
Jamie, did you have more Kix questions?
Kix questions. This one, I understand if you can't answer it, but you do have a new comic coming out with Sidon Ithano, so Star Wars Adventures. And will we see the entire crew in it?
Yes.
Cool.
Because there's big diehard Clone Wars fans that like might not necessarily know like the whereabouts of Kix. Because I mean, there's Star Wars fans who just they consume the visual media, not necessarily the books. It's
weird. We have like a subset of like fans that like you find the people who are like interested in the same stuff as you are within the Star Wars universe. And so like we out of the three of us, we know a lot of people who like really like Kix. It's like kind of like crazy. So like we're all aware of it. And so it's like you got this like strong subset who are like really excited for like anything to come out about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite kind of piece of Star Wars trivia, right? You always, to anybody who hasn't read the books or anything, you always mention that, oh yeah, in Kix, you know, he's frozen and then wakes up 30 years later and ends up on a pirate crew. And you know,
I do. I jokingly say, like, Kix is the key to bridging the Clone Wars to the sequel trilogy. I
is.
like jokingly but seriously say it all the time because
yeah,
that's literally it.
he's like the last clone, you know?
Yeah.
I think I tagged you in a tweet the other day, Landry. One of our friends, Rexon Around, who does a lot of clone armor stuff, he had a picture of his Kix outfit, and he's like, "Oh, I think about Kix daily or something, and I want to know."
Yeah,
like,
I did see that. That was.
are we going to see more of them? And I think I teased it, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah."
So yeah, I mean, the answer to that, I guess, is yes. Well, you know, in this comic at least, and hopefully, maybe.
I probably shouldn't say anything, but I'm going to spoil just a little. The comic really, one of the things that, because I assume that people who read this comic won't necessarily have read the book. Although I found that a lot of people haven't read the book, but have watched one of the many YouTube videos that discuss what happened to Kix. And I've noticed a lot of those YouTube videos never even tell where what they're getting that from, which is always a little frustrating. It's like, okay, you've got 1 million views or whatever. Could you just maybe mention the book? Because if people go and buy the book, maybe they'll let me write another book.
Yeah.
That book right there.
Yeah, that book is Star Wars: Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away, Volume 1, Aliens.
Yes.
Go buy it,
want a
everybody.
Volume 2.
We do want a Volume 2.
We're chomping at the bit for Volume 2.
But I am finally doing an 8-page. It's a backup story. It's an 8-page piece. So I had to really jump in and jump out. And I'm trying to, my goal is to do more of these with the Corsair. I have a long arc mapped out. I have a lot of material planned if I can get them on board to do it, which means, you know, loud voices on that. So this story is I had to assume that people wouldn't necessarily have read the short story. And so it definitely moves the needle forward, but also kind of introduces the characters. It's introductory in a way. But I'm very happy with it. I dug deep into some nerdy comic book lore. I won't say anything, but a character. I wonder if this is spoiling too much. I reference another comics creator named Jim Woodring, who did a Star Wars arc for Dark Horse in the mid-90s, and I'll tell more about that after it's out. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. We don't want you to get in trouble. So.
It's not even a big thing. It's just a fun little thing. You know, these just nodding to this stuff.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead, AJ.
Something I kind of thought about was, I don't know if you noticed, but in season 2 of The Mandalorian, there was a lot of Force Awakens kind of background aliens and background characters. I think Constable Zuvio was even there, and I think the opening scene with the Gamorrean fight, Matt, I think you referenced it, right? Was Constable Zuvio there, or he was in the background?
Constable Zuvio is on Navarro.
Navarro.
When they go back
and
Navarro.
watch that, I didn't see that. Oh my god!
They used a bunch of just random background aliens that we saw from the sequel, like mostly Force Awakens. And I think it would line up, right? I'm really hoping we could see Sidon Ithano in that, because he fits in that world perfectly, like Outlaws in the Outer Rim.
There's no reason he couldn't show up. I have written, I pitched an origin story for him that they haven't picked up on yet. I do hope they will at some point, but it would put his timeline. Where did I have him? I'm thinking. It would be, I don't know, in that time for his kind of beginnings of becoming the Crimson Corsair would take place, I don't know, about 10 years before Battle of Yavin. We don't know how old he is, right? Or how long his species lives. So I just thought that was a fun time to play with. But that would be when he's very young. That
would be a blast.
Yeah.
He's living in a monk temple. That's all I'll say. As a child.
Oh, wow.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's probably never going to get picked up, so I can go ahead and spoil that one. Or you know, what was it? Thinking. So that's The Mandalorian is what?
5 years after Endor.
5 years after Endor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking 25 years before. Yeah, there's no reason because we don't know how long he lives. I don't like aliens that live too long for the most part in my stories because it takes away from the feeling of something happening a long time ago. When I sat down to write this, in fact, when I wrote the Crimson Corsair story, the feeling had to be that the Clone Wars was like the way we talk about World War I or World War II, depending on our age. Like it was a long time ago. You know, but it still affects us. It still resonates and it's still out there, but it's so long, like for a young person, it's a very like, oh, that long ago war. When you have characters routinely that live 1,000 years, it kind of diminishes that aspect a little bit. And it makes it hard to write about this very interesting generational aspect that you can have in Star Wars just because of the fact it's been going on. Like we've been watching in-universe stories for, you know, 50, 60 years now, right? Of in-universe time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe it's like 60, 68 years, something like that.
Yeah, and that's not even counting getting into stuff like in the novels and the High Republic that recently came out and all that. Within the visual media, I think that's about where we're at. And because of that, we get some interesting generational stuff, but it diminishes as soon as like a character like Maz Kanata shows up. It's like, oh yeah, no, I was there for all that. Or when we start talking about Chewbacca being that old, which makes for funny jokes, it kind of like,
it's like, wait, you were actually there?
Yeah. It diminishes some of this sense of like when Han Solo is talking about the Jedi in New Hope, he's talking about the Jedi like it's this, like they've been wiped out so long he doesn't really believe they exist.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. There are other ways.
You're right. I mean, in your story, you have, I forget who says it, but they're like, oh, the Clone Wars, that's ancient history. So yeah, I totally see what you're talking about. And I was going to mention, like, Han Solo, they've been trying to do this in the new canon, where they try to make it so that, yeah, the Jedi feel really ancient. They talk about ancient religions and A New Hope for the Jedi, but also in the sequels, it's like Rey thinks that Luke Skywalker is a myth. He's been gone for like 6 years, you know, and all of a sudden it's like the Jedi and all that mysticism, it might not even be real.
Yeah.
So it definitely feels like you're right. It's almost like they want to have their cake and eat it too, where they have these long lasting characters, but then at the same time, so many people see history as this, you know, very short sighted in terms of like, oh, you know, that was like forever ago.
That's one of the things that made the clones interesting to me and made taking a clone. I know there's some debate around how they age, whether they accelerated aging ends after a certain point and they slow down, or if it continues. I'm not going to weigh in on what's accurate there because, you know, that's out of my job description. But if clones do generally live this accelerated life, that even makes the Clone Wars feel, from a clone perspective, from Kix's perspective, super ancient history. I mean, what are the odds of any other clones being alive if the accelerated aging is, because it's been a total of 50 years for him. He was frozen, right? Because end of just before Revenge of the Sith, all the way until shortly before Force Awakens.
He should be the last one, because like obviously we have Rex towards the end of Return of the Jedi, but other than that, like,
and you know, he's already looking like Santa Claus at that point. So
I mean, I guess at least if we go with the last of the clones that fought in the Clone Wars, I mean, there could potentially be other clones, I suppose. Like they could continue to make or new ones show up or anything, but they wouldn't have the same set of experiences. And that's really what it's about. It's not about just being the same genetic sequencing, but also having lived that, like that brothers in arms sort of thing. The shared experiences. Shared experiences are huge. As I've like, just for an aside, I used to work with this guy at this comic book store. He was the owner, and he was just horrible in so many ways of a boss. But, you know, I ended up knowing him. He passed away about 5 years ago, and I ended up knowing him for 30 plus years. And we were friends just from the sake that we had kind of gone through so much together, even though we weren't we didn't actually like each other very much, but we had all these shared experiences, and that becomes very important. The clones have that, but that's clones who served. So yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, that's a really cool way of looking at it. I hope you get to explore that a little bit.
Definitely.
I do too. That'd be fun.
That would be very cool. Just before we get too far away from it, you mentioned a Sidon Ithano origin story, and one of the questions that's really been bugging me is, how did he get the helmet? I love the helmet, the Kaleesh warrior helmet. You know, General Grievous's warrior race. Do you explore that at all, or do you have any idea?
That's completely explored, and I'll just say it kind of plays into the idea of I don't know how to put it, because I did a lot of research at the time when I pitched the story, and you end up working on 18 other things the next week, and you kind of move on.
Right.
But it had to do with the exploring the living gods of the Kaleesh, like, because they have their gods were all people in their history that have been elevated to kind of this godhood status. And I kind of went with taking a little bit of the way the Greek pantheon works and applying it to the Kaleesh of this pantheon of gods from different points in history that have been, and the idea being that there was, how did it work? There was a god with the name. So basically the idea that Sidon Ithano chose his name, and there was a god in the Kaleesh history known as Ithano.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
Great.
that's as much as I'll say.
Okay.
That's great. You know, choosing your name is a big thing in Star Wars right now. So
Huge thing in Star Wars.
that's a very thematically solid idea. Oh man. Oh, that is so cool. Damn.
I want to change off the Sidon Ithano topic, but another story that I absolutely love in your short story book is Recipe for Death, which is the one about Cookie, Strono Cookie Tugs. Yeah. Another character that I absolutely adore for like a lot of reasons, because like he's come up again recently within the Galaxy's Edge cookbook. He's like the narrator of the entire thing. So I guess like my biggest thing with that so far, did they reach out to you at all, like before they wrote that little bit for the Galaxy's Edge cookbook? No. Oh,
I found out during a different interview. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
It would be neat if they didn't need to. You know, it's almost kind of impossible, and I think it could probably, if I were writing something, well, you may want to reach out. Sometimes it can kind of pollute the process. The important thing, you know, they definitely, it seems like they reference the story. Mm-hmm. And like he's come up in a couple places. I was really happy that there's in Star Wars Battlefront 2, you can visit the grave of the character who was murdered in that story, Rob's Ely. Yeah. And Rob's Ely is named after one of my oldest friends. Rob Ely is his actual name.
Oh wow.
He does custom toys. He's on Twitter. So he's got a grave in a video game. He used to work for Namco as a video game. What did he do for Namco? Like PR. So him being in a Star Wars game was a nice.
That's so funny.
I murdered him.
I love that.
That's really cool. I mean, whoever did the world building for Battlefront 2, that's cool that they read the story and took that piece.
Yeah, you go and you find it. I mean, if you translate it, it's here lies Rob's Ely.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
For Cookie, he was one of the characters that you just picked, right? He wasn't one that they requested. What drew you to picking him?
You know, I don't remember why I picked him. He just, I don't know why. He looked interesting to me. I think the idea of him being a chef. I knew he was a cook. Like,
yeah, that's visual for our video people.
He was. I don't lie. That story was one of the hardest ones to write. I was like, that was the last one. The last two that I wrote were that one and the Unkar Plutt story, and I was kind of more at sea with both of them. I think creatively, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the idea of making him like have all these aspirations of fine dining and being like the idea that he took his cooking so seriously, because I think the original thing was kind of like he's a cook. I'm like, no, he's a chef. And that was fun. And making it all revolve around these recipes and whatnot, this cookbook and murders. And then I think I was just watching a lot of Masterchef at the time too. So
There you go.
It's good. I mean, like the Cliff Notes version of it is so they literally have like a cooking show to figure out like who killed the other guy. Yeah, it's good. I love that tale. And I love that it's set in Maz's castle as well.
I had a couple exchanges with the chef Graham Elliott, is his name, on MasterChef at that time too. Because I basically based it around him, and so he retweeted that story, which was fun.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's cool. So I guess one of the questions I'm thinking about now that we're going into like other characters that you wrote stories about, are there any background characters in The Force Awakens or just in that era in general that you wish you got a chance to write a story on that you might not have picked? You know, one of the cards on the table that you didn't pick that you wish you had.
I don't know. It was such a blur. You know, you look at them. They're for some reason, the only one I really remember being there. I mean, there were a bunch, obviously, but and I picked the ones I thought looked most visually interesting. So the ones that none of the rest stuck out to me. There was one card on the table that said you can't use this one, and that was what's her name? She is in the same scene in Maz Kanata's castle. She's an informant because somebody else was writing her story already.
Oh, the First Order informant there?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Bazine Natal. Yeah. She's like black and white, like outfit.
Mrs. Eyebrows.
And I think one of the reasons, so there's some kind of gangster that she's like acting like a mole for. She's hanging out with this like big gangstery looking guy. Yeah. And originally I was kind of interested in him, but because her story was going to be really tied to him, I ended up saying because they were kind of, you could write him. I'm like, I didn't want to have somebody who was tied too deeply with the lore of another author and have us risk stepping on each other's toes or contradicting material. Because here's the thing, I didn't know how these characters would appear in the film. I had a brief overview of like what the First Order was and, how it related to the Empire. And that's really it. I didn't know, they didn't tell me, well, this character is going to have screen time or not. I was as surprised as anyone when Constable Zuvio basically didn't show up in the film. I was also overwhelmingly happy when the Crimson Corsair actually had a speaking line. Yeah, I did not know that was going to happen. I didn't know what context these characters would show up in the film, if any. I thought that maybe they'd just be a character in the background and that's it. Like Strono Tuggs was. Yeah. So when they told me that this character already was tied to another author, I that's the only one I remember. I was interested in writing him. And I decided I didn't want to. I was super happy with my choices on some of like the Frygaijins.
Those were these guys, right? I
think I'm saying it wrong. It just clicked with me the other day. I think it's actually Frygaijins.
They're like for visually for audio people. So they're like yellow, fuzzy, small guys, and they wear goggles. There's one in Resistance who's like a janitor. Yeah.
That was one of the only times I've seen. Well, there are two things. It's both in Resistance I've seen where the lore goes. I don't know how that works. One was OP Pit because the way I set up the two Frygaijins, and I think it's that because I think they're supposed to resemble Fry Guys from McDonald's.
Oh my gosh, they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
That's great.
I think that, because I set them up as a very frightening species. Yeah. They are, they're from a planet called Tansel 5, which is actually shows up like a V, and it's actually supposed to kind of suggest Transylvania, Tansel V.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
Yeah. Their mouths, their entire head opens up like a Muppet hinge filled with fangs. And they find sunlight. They have an aversion to sunlight. They're a nocturnal species. They're basically space vampires. mad scientist space vampires. So when one's poking around as a janitor, I'm like, that's a little demon right there. That is, I would not trust, I would not be alone with that thing, and I would not hang out with OP Pit in the shadows, is all I'm saying.
That adds so much to OP Pit, though.
It really does. Because like the duo with the tail, they're absolute psychopaths. But then like you have just like mild mannered OP Pit, but like I don't know, everyone keeps like taking advantage of his like floor waxer. So like
that's true.
I don't know
what's happening in the shadows. Like I would watch out. I would not hang out with OP Pit in the shadows.
Anybody messing with his floor scrubber, they go missing.
But this is the risk of working in a shared universe. Like you contribute, and you hope your contributions resonate like it has with the Crimson Corsair, but you can't count on it always, and you have to accept and be prepared that somebody is going to come along and do something different, which can be disappointing when it happens, but it's part of the machine. Like I think that what they did with Unkar Plutt's species is a little bit different than what I had in mind. Because I have a female, and there are no female members of his species, and they did basically kind of say, no, this is like the people behind the lore said, this is this other race, but she looks just like Unkar Plutt, so
so that doesn't really work with the story where he says, oh, I can tell that's not a female because there are no females, and she looks like a female version of a species, even if they label her something different.
Exactly. So that was a little, but I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It is what it is.
I guess to bring it back to Sidon, one thing I wanted to mention was Rise of Skywalker. He becomes a hero at the end of the day. I mean, he was never really a bad guy, but
he probably saves the day, really. I mean, he's probably the...
And it's funny because like when we saw the movie the first few times, we would notice him in the celebration scene at the end. But if you go to like the battle on Exegol, he's on the, in the background behind Finn and Janna and everyone fighting, with his rifle and whatnot. So it was cool to see him there. Quiggle must have been there too, limping around. But.
Limping around, he's just like it's so funny. Okay, look, we have like majority of like the Sidon Ithano merch, and so like these two came as a duo, obviously. So Sidon and Quiggled, like they're the only ones. Like I just love to like see them. They stand next to Finn usually, because of course they would have to. But like I love. It was really funny when we saw Rise of Skywalker the first time, because like all of us are like in tune with like is just like seeing Sidon like if possible, and just like seeing him like on the lander was like absolutely insane for us, because I'm like no, if you pause at this one frame you can tell that that's not a Sith trooper, that is the red helmet of Sidon Ithano, and it's just great.
There's this emotional scene with like Rey and Poe and Finn hugging, and then I'm elbowing Jamie and I'm like, there's Sidon in the back.
There he is.
He sticks out pretty well. So
I got to see all three. Well, all the new movies I got to see at Lucasfilm.
Nice.
So I'm there with just watching for it, and I'm not enjoying the experience the way I should, because I'm sitting there watching for those moments. Like it was rewarding. It was very rewarding.
That's
awesome. Gonna be exciting. That's so cool.
So I think that kind of points out. Sorry, Jamie, but that kind of points out that they like the character a lot. He looks cool. They put him in the background again. He even got his own little mission in the Lego Force Awakens game. That was cool. And I mean, I could see him popping up in Force Awakens if the timeline makes sense for that. Mandalorian. I could see him popping up in Mandalorian.
It would be an early show. Maybe not exactly the same crew. Quiggled, I would think, would be one of his earliest crew members. I think that's probably his first and closest crew member at that point. Would make sense. But the rest at that point, Squeaky should come in pretty early. My idea was he was a Gamorrean gladiator. This is before they had those show up in Mandalorian season 2.
Better,
because my idea was that at the time my idea was that there was different casts of Gamorreans. We're used to seeing like this smaller statured cast that often goes out and becomes mercenaries or guards, but there's this warrior cast. So I did a custom toy of Squeaky, and I used for the 3 1/4 figure line, and I used a Hulk body So to give you some sense of what the proportions of Squeaky would be, he would tower over everyone else. Like the Corsair would come up to middle of his chest, and he's built like the Hulk and covered in tattoos. And he spent years as like, he's basically like Conan the Barbarian in the Gamorrean world.
I love this.
Squeaky the Barbarian. I like
Squeaky the Barbarian, basically, yeah. Oh, I'm bumping the button there. Hold on.
Oh.
There we go. It's this iPad.
That's so funny.
But he's also this like incredibly kind and gentle being. I liked it as contrast to his stature, but the idea being that he was, and there's more of it in the comic, so I'll leave it at that. But I didn't like the idea that all the Gamorreans always look the same. I like the idea of mixing up the body types a little with that.
I remember when The Mandalorian season 2 was first revealed, the first image they revealed was like this big buff Gamorrean, gladiator. So it seems like you and them were on the right page or on the same page for a while there. And then I guess something changed.
Yeah.
Along the way, but that's pretty funny. And okay, I have to ask, how do you pronounce? Is it Penducol? Penducol?
Penduquel?
Penduquel. All right, so that's kind of how I was saying it. That's cool. All right, I like that whole crew. I was
half of our questions have just been, how do you pronounce this? How do you?
I enjoy the Ishi Tib. Like, I ended up doing some fun stuff with the Ishi Tib, and having like. It wasn't planned, but somehow, I don't know, something about their faces made me want to keep going back. They're just interesting looking creatures. So I did a story in Star Wars Adventures with a frequent collaborator of mine, Eric Jones, where Leia goes to the planet of the Ishi Tib shortly after New Hope, before Empire, trying to get them on board with the rebellion, the cause of the rebellion. And that's where I got to kind of establish Leia as not like as a spy. That's basically what she has all these different like identity like kits and stuff, like different like IDs that she goes through. But as an aside, like exploring Penduquel as this like lower tier member of the Corsair's crew, an Ishi Tib in that regard, and then doing these like exploring the like political structure of the Ishi Tib on their home planet was an interesting contrast for me.
That's cool. Very cool. Sad to see him go. Spoiler alert for anybody who but one more thing, because I read the story last night to refresh myself, to prepare for this, and there was one line. I'm a big flag guy. I like flags. And if you Google Sidon Ithano's flag, there's a flag that I made that you find immediately. But when I was reading the story, I honed in on this one line that said the two-eyed flag of the Crimson Corsair that they were flying on the Scribe.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know? Do you have like an image of that in your head that you could tell me that I could make? Just the two, the two eyes on his helmet.
Based off his helmet, yeah.
All right, I gotta make that then. That's my next. That's awesome.
I love it.
His helmet is so interesting of a design. I seem to have in the background.
Yeah.
I need one of those. I need to get one of those. Like
they are out there, like random. So I don't remember exactly. AJ, you would know which vendor we got it from, but it was through Etsy. We're in the process of making the full costume. It's kind of weird because since it's such an obscure background character, technically, there's like barely any resources about it aside from like a Facebook build group, which I'm in, which I think I posted a photo of this exact spot with a selfie, and I think he liked it, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, we're in the process of that. It'll come eventually. So it's been something literally since 2015, like we wanted to do, like even like before like the podcast existed. So we're like, we just got to do it. It's on its way. But yeah, so I think that we've asked a ton of things, and we want to thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on the HoloNet Marauders show. I guess my next thing from here is there anything that you'd like to promote on your end, or like anything like that? What do you have coming up?
Well, my next thing out is Star Wars Adventures Volume 2, Issue 7, with a backup story with Sidon Ithano, the Crimson Corsair, and his crew and Kix. And it comes out, I think, I want to guess, July 28th or the Wednesday that's around there. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I'm going to assume that's a Wednesday. End of July. It's been done for a while with brilliant art by Nick Brokenshire. Just beautiful piece. And I also had a book come out recently called Pepper Page Saves the Universe. It's an all ages story about a young girl who is a hardcore fan for a superhero comic book character. She lives in the distant future, and this crazy time portal experiment thing happens where she gets bombarded by rays from cosmic beings, and she becomes the hero that she is a fan of, and it's a miserable, terrifying experience for her until she learns to embrace who she has potential to be. That's a book that came out recently. What else do I have going on? I just worked on like one of those DC Comics encyclopedias. I work all over the place. So yeah. That's basically it right now.
Well, good. Cool. We're super excited for the new comic, obviously. We're probably going to do like a big thing about it because it's very rare recently to get Sidon stuff. But yeah, and then my last question in general, where can we find you on social media so anyone can check out what you're up to?
The main place for me is Twitter. I'm at Landry Q Walker on Twitter. And yeah, I am on sometimes on Facebook or Instagram, but I don't post there very often.
Okay. We'll tag you on Twitter and fill you in on what we're up to. And then again, just for everybody else. Oh, what, you got something? Oh, cool. Sorry. I thought something else was I'm like, I'm hearing noises. Anyway, this has been the HoloNet Marauders podcast. You can find us everywhere at HoloNet Marauders, on Twitter, just at HoloNet Marauder, no S, because otherwise it would have been too long. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to the HoloNet Marauders podcast.